You know that feeling when you just, can't shut it off? I'm talking about those 3.0 a.m. stare at the ceiling sessions, the constant mental chatter.
Mm.
It's like there's a monkey living in your brain, you know? It's just swinging from a branch of worry to a branch of desire and then right back to worry again. And it creates this background hum of anxiety that just never really goes away.
The monkey mind. It's a classic description for a reason.
Yeah.
It is, for most of us, the defining characteristic of the human experience.
It is absolutely exhausting. We chase success, we chase relationships, we chase the next weekend, thinking, okay, once I get there, then I'll relax, then I'll have peace. But the goalpost just keeps moving, doesn't it?
It always moves.
You get the promotion, and suddenly you're worried about the new responsibilities. You get into the relationship, and then you worry about losing it. And that brings us to the stack of papers we are wading through today. We're looking at Book 5, Upasama Khanda, or the section on quietude, from the ancient text, the Yoga Vasishta.
A phenomenal text.
And I have to say, looking through these notes, this isn't just some dusty philosophy book. It really reads like a manual for mental deconstruction.
It really does. It's not about adding more beliefs on top of what you already have. It's actually about taking the whole structure apart.
It's asking a pretty radical question. What if the ultimate power move wasn't conquering the world, but conquering the minister inside your own head? That's a character we're going to get introduced to today, the minister.
Yes, and that's a key metaphor. The central theme here is upasante, which translates to quietude or rest. But we have to be really specific here because that word can be misleading, you know.
Right. It's not just taking a nap.
Not at all. It's not the rest of sleeping, and it certainly isn't the rest of taking a vacation to a beach resort. It's a kind of metaphysical rest. The text is trying to show us how to eliminate the false identification of the self with the body and, crucially, with the ego.
That's the big villain in this story, isn't it? The Hamkara.
Exactly. Ahamkara. The ego sense. The I maker. The text identifies this ego sense as the chief obstacle to peace. I mean, fundamentally, we're suffering because we think we are the voice in our head. We think we are that constantly running narrative.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly, because if I'm not the voice in my head, then who on earth am I? It feels like an identity crisis just waiting to happen. If I stop identifying with my thoughts, do I just disappear?
And that's the fear. That's the fear the ego uses to keep you trapped in the system. But the text argues that you don't disappear. You actually appear for the very first time you wake up.
Well, we're going to get there. We have a serious roadmap for this deep dive. First, we're going to look at the philosophical foundation of why this text claims the world is an illusion, which sounds trippy, I know. But then we have 4 incredible case studies.
Amazing stories.
We've got King Janaka, the intellectual who found peace just by watching a chaotic mob from his balcony. Then we have the story of Punya and Pavana, which involves a very radical approach to grief and past lives as a frog.
Yes. That is a particularly striking story about the nature of attachment. It forces you to look at your relationships through a telescope rather than a microscope, in a way.
I like that. Then we have King Bali, a demon king who conquered the entire universe and then realized he was just incredibly, profoundly bored. I think a lot of high achievers will probably resonate with that one.
Oh, absolutely. The ultimate is that all there is moment.
And finally, Prahlada, a devotee who came to realize he was the god he was worshiping. So, yeah, I'm ready to have my mind completely blown by these stories.
And I'm ready to help connect the philosophical dots. Because what's so fascinating here is that while the stories are incredibly diverse, you've got kings, demons, orphans, the solution they all arrive at is always the same. It's about dismantling the mind's reliance on the external world.
So let's unpack this architecture of illusion, as you called it. The text starts strong. It asserts that the world we see, this illusory fabric, is supported by action rajas and ignorance tamas. Can you break those terms down for us a bit?
Of course. So in this system of thought, nature is made up of 3 fundamental qualities, or gunas. You have sattva, which is purity, light, balance. You have rajas, which is activity, passion, energy, restlessness. And then you have tamas, which is inertia, darkness, delusion, and ignorance.
Okay.
The text is saying that the world, as we normally perceive it, this chaotic, stressful, up and down experience, is sustained by rajas, our constant doing, chasing, running, and tamas, our fundamental ignorance of who we really are.
So it's a feedback loop. We don't know who we are, so we keep doing things to try and define ourselves, and the doing just creates more world, more chaos.
Precisely. And it uses this really visceral analogy. The world is like a snake sloughing off its skin.
Hmm.
If you're wise, if your nature is more sattvic or pure, you can just cast aside. It's no big deal. But most of us are wearing the old dead skin like a coat. We're dragging it around.
We think the dead skin is us.
Right. And Vasista, the sage who's teaching all this, is pointing out that the mind is the active agent. This is so crucial. We tend to think the world happens to us. We think, oh, the traffic is bad, my boss is a jerk, the economy is down.
It's all external.
Yes, but the text says the mind stretches out the world. It literally constructs your reality. And here's the key insight, and it's a bit of a mind bender. Upon close investigation, the mind is actually nothingness. It only exists when you feed it thoughts.
Wait, hold on a second. Nothingness. That's a really bold claim. I mean, my anxiety feels pretty heavy, my stress feels physical, my thoughts feel like a ton of bricks sometimes. How can the mind be nothing?
Think of it like a fire. Does a fire exist independently of the fuel, the wood or the gas?
No. If you take the wood away, the fire just goes out.
Exactly. The mind, in this context, is the burning process. It is the activity of consuming thoughts, desires, fears, memories. If you stop feeding it the fuel of, I want this and I'm afraid of that, the mind as a chaotic, separate entity simply ceases to exist. It returns to its source, which is pure consciousness.
So we're essentially just keeping this bonfire of anxiety going by constantly throwing logs on it. Every time I worry about a deadline, that's another log. Every time I get angry in traffic, another log.
Precisely. The text uses another metaphor that really stuck with me. It says the mind is like a tortoise in a hole. It's shrouded in the darkness of the body, and it's obsessed with the tiny world of sensory enjoyment it can find in that hole.
That's such a bleak but weirdly accurate image. We are the tortoise. We find a little hole. Maybe it's our apartment, our job title, our social media feed, and we just hunker down. We're obsessed with the sensory stuff because it distracts us from the darkness and the vastness outside the hole.
And we're terrified to poke our head out because the infinite feels unsafe to the ego. The ego needs boundaries. It loves the whole. The whole is knowable. The sky is not.
But here's the trap, and the text is really honest about this. It lays out this dilemma for the seeker. On one hand, the mind is the only tool we have to gain spiritual knowledge. We need our brains to understand all this. I mean, we're using our minds right now to talk about it.
Sure, we have to.
But on the other hand, the mind is the very thing that seduces us into worldliness, into the trap. It's like, I don't know, trying to use a thief to catch a thief.
That is a perfect analogy. The text compares it to a child trying to escape a yaksha, a powerful, tricky spirit, or trying to climb an impossibly steep mountain. It's a struggle against your own instrument. You have to use the mind to transcend the mind.
That just sounds like a system crash waiting to happen. How do you even do that?
It's a controlled crash, a deliberate one. And the goal is nirvana, which is described in this particular section as the final extinction of the ego sense. Not of you, but of the false I. And there is this beautiful scene described in the source material. When the sage Vasistha starts speaking about this true quietude, the entire assembly of princes and ladies becomes perfectly still.
I love that description. It says they became like stars in a clear autumn night. Even the birds stopped chirping. It says the unstable monkey mind of the minister Sarana became focused. It's like the sheer power of the idea just silenced the whole room.
Because true quietude is magnetic. We all crave it on some deep level, but we usually seek it through more noise, more distraction, more entertainment. We think if we watch enough Netflix or go on enough vacations, we'll relax. But Vasistha is offering quietude through understanding. He silenced the room, not by shouting, but by speaking a truth that resonated with their deeper, silent selves.
Okay, so that's the theory. The mind is a fire we need to stop fueling, a tortoise in a hole. But how do we actually do that? How do we get the tortoise to poke its head out? Let's move to our first case study, the intellectual path. Enter King Janaka.
Okay.
Now, Janaka isn't some hermit in a cave. He's a king. The text says he's like a wish-fulfilling tree to his people. He's prosperous, powerful, has it all.
He's a great example for the modern listener because he isn't checking out of society. He's not rejecting his responsibilities. He's wealthy, powerful, and has duties. But internally, he's intellectually curious. He's a seeker living in a palace. And his turning point comes when he's walking in a grove and hears the songs of the Siddhas.
Let's set that scene here. A lush royal garden, a king walking alone, probably wrestling with his thoughts. And then he hears these voices. What exactly are siddhas again?
So Siddhas are, in the mythology, perfected beings. They're described as invisible aerial spirits who live in the subtle atmosphere. They represent pure knowledge that's just kind of floating in the ether, available to those who are quiet enough to hear it.
I love that. So he's not seeking them out. He's just eavesdropping on the universe's private radio station. And their song isn't exactly a pop anthem. They're singing about the I am he, aham, Hansa. They're singing that seeking happiness outside yourself is like ignoring a gem in your hand to chase after, worthless trifles.
The song is a direct wake-up call. They are singing, "We adore that which is neither subject nor object." They are pointing directly to the consciousness that witnesses everything but is attached to absolutely nothing. It's the ultimate truth, just delivered in a song.
And this sends Janaka into a full-blown crisis. He hears this, and instead of feeling enlightened and happy, he becomes dejected. He retreats to a high balcony. This feels very cinematic to me. He's physically rising above the chaos to observe it.
The metaphor is perfect, isn't it?
It is. He looks down at his own city, at the restless mob of people scurrying about, and he has this profound, devastating monologue on the vanity of all human endeavor.
It's a moment of existential dread, but a very productive one. He looks at his subjects, and he doesn't see people anymore. He sees mechanisms. He observes that men are rolled about like stones in a river, pushed by a force they don't even understand.
And he includes himself in this. He calls himself a fool for relying on his own life, which he compares to a painted moon. That image really stuck with me. A painted moon. Can we dig into that for a second?
It's such a powerful image of illusion. A painted moon on a canvas might look beautiful. It might have the right shape, the right color. It might evoke a feeling. But it has no light of its own. It has no gravity. It doesn't control the tides. It's flat. It's just paint.
It's a prop.
It's a prop. And Janaka's realizing that his entire royal life, his power, his wealth, his reputation, his very identity as king is just paint on a canvas. It looks real, but there's no substance to it. It has no inherent reality.
Wow. And then he visualizes time. This is where it gets really trippy for me. He sees time as a kind of cosmic juggler. But time isn't just juggling bowling pins or balls. Time is juggling gods.
Yes. He has this vision of time as a being that seizes Brahmas, Vishnus, and Shivas, the creators, sustainers, and destroyers of entire universes, and just flings them around like little playthings.
That is such a humbling perspective. I mean, if the creator of the universe is just a bouncy ball in the hands of time, what does that make my deadline next Tuesday? Or the argument I had yesterday?
It makes it infinitesimally small. It dissolves the self-importance we place on our daily dramas. Janaka looks at all this and asks, what sorcerer has bewitched me? He realizes he's been living under a spell, the spell of thinking that this temporary fleeting world is solid and permanent.
So he makes a decision. He doesn't jump off the balcony. He decides to pierce his mind with the needle of reason.
The needle of reason. I love that phrasing too. It's surgical. It suggests that you can't bludgeon the mind into submission with affirmations or blind faith. You have to be precise. You have to dissect it.
So this reasoning, this vichara, is it just thinking really hard?
It's a specific kind of thinking. It isn't emotional brooding. It's a cool, calculated dismantling of the ego's claims. Janaka asks himself logical questions. Does this object bring lasting happiness? No. Does this status last forever? No. Is my body permanent? No. He just follows the logic to its inevitable conclusion. Nothing external is reliable.
And the outcome is what's so fascinating. He doesn't abdicate. He doesn't throw away his crown and run off to the woods to meditate. He goes back to his duties. But the text says he now functions like a sleeping man.
This is the introduction of the Jivanmukta concept, the living liberated. To any outside observer, King Janaka looks exactly the same. He's signing decrees, he's holding court, he's eating dinner with his family, but internally, he's asleep to the drama. He acts, but he knows he is not the actor.
He's the actor who knows he's on a stage. If the script says King Janaka gets angry, he can play the part of anger perfectly, but he's not actually lost in the anger.
Exactly. He rules without joy or sorrow. He's incredibly efficient, probably more so than before, because he isn't clouded by anxiety about the results or attachment to the outcome. He has, in effect, hacked the system of life.
So that's the intellectual path, reasoning your way out of the trap. Now let's pivot to a story that hits a bit harder on the emotional level. This is the story of Punya and Pavana. This one is all about grief.
And it is a radical, almost shocking cure for grief. We have two brothers, sons of a sage named Dirkapa. You have Punya, whose name means meritorious or wise, and Pavana, whose name means holy, but who is described as half-awakened.
Which is, I think, a very polite way of saying he's a good kid, but he doesn't quite get the big picture yet. So the context is tragic. Their father dies. Then their mother, completely overcome with grief, drops dead too.
Terrible situation.
And Punya, the wise one, performs the funeral rites and, moves on. He's cool. He understands the cycle of life and death. But Pavana just falls apart.
He is utterly devastated. He's wandering the woods, wailing, just completely consumed by the loss of his parents. This is a very human moment. We have all been Pavana at some point in our lives.
Absolutely. The raw pain of loss. But Punya steps in with what I can only describe as the most intense, tough love speech in the history of therapy. He doesn't offer a hug or a tissue. He offers a logical argument.
He confronts his brother and asks essentially, which parents are you crying for? These specific ones.
Right. He says, why mourn these two? You have had thousands of parents in thousands of lives. And then, and this is my favorite part of the source material, he starts listing Pavana's past lives. And it is a specifically detailed list. It's not just, oh, you were an animal once. He gets granular.
He does. And he lists these incarnations specifically to show the absurdity of being attached to just one form, one relationship. He says, you were a stag in a flowery field. You were a gander, a swan in a lotus pool.
You were a tree in the forest. Just imagine that life for a second, just standing there for 100 years watching the seasons change.
You were a lion on mountain crags, a frog on a river beach.
And then he gets really, really specific. He mentions that Pavana was an ant for 6 months, living in the bark of a tree, and a scorpion in a dunghill for a year and a half.
A scorpion in a dunghill. That is a rough incarnation. But Punya's point is this ruthless, compassionate logic. He asks his brother, if you aren't crying right now for your ant mother or your scorpion father or your frog daddy from lives past, why are you crying so desperately for this one human mother?
At first it sounds so cold, so dismissive. Don't cry for your mom because you didn't cry for your frog mom. But when you really sit with it, it's strangely liberating.
It is the ultimate perspective shift. Punya is pointing out that this relationship we cherish so much is just, as the text says, dust raised by the gusts of fancy. It's a temporary arrangement of karma. If you zoom out to the scale of thousands of lives, the intense attachment to this one specific set of parents starts to look arbitrary. It's just the costume you happen to be wearing right now.
It's the long game, to end all long games. It suggests that our overwhelming grief is based on a very limited data set. We only remember the last, 40, 50, 80 years, not the last 4,000.
Exactly. Punya asks his brother, why this partiality? If you are going to cry, logically, you should be crying for millions of deaths for every being you've ever been related to, but that would be absurd. So why invest so much suffering in just one?
And the craziest part is, it works. Pavana listens. He gets it. He realizes that his grief is selective and therefore irrational, based on the illusion of my and mine. He attains enlightenment right there. And the text says they lived in the forest, liberated until they eventually attained nirvana, like lamps running out of oil.
That's a classic metaphor in Indian philosophy. The lamp goes out, not because you blew it out violently, but because the fuel, the karma, the desire, the oil is completely exhausted. It's a peaceful, natural cessation.
Okay, so from grief, let's talk about a guy who had the opposite problem. He didn't lose everything. He'd already gained everything. Let's talk about King Bali.
King Bali. A fascinating figure. He's the ruler of the demons, the Asuras. And we should clarify here, in this cosmology, demons aren't necessarily evil in the cartoonish hellfire sense. They are just the anti-gods, the rivals for power. They represent the ultimate materialists.
They are the ambitious, win-at-all-costs tech bros of the ancient world.
That's a perfect modern analogy. And Bali has won. He conquered the gods. He has all the wish-fulfilling gems. He rules the three world. He is the ultimate achiever. He has everything anyone could ever possibly want.
He's the guy who won capitalism, won politics, and won every war. And he's sitting on a peak of Mount Meru, the center of the universe, looking out at his vast empire, and he realizes he is incredibly soul-crushingly bored.
It's the crisis of repetition. He sits there and thinks, okay, I did that. I conquered that world. Now what? I guess I do it again. He uses a very visceral, very repulsive analogy. Chewing ground meat.
Ugh. That is such a gross and effective image.
It's meant to be. He says that living this repetitive life, eating, sleeping, embracing, conquering, is just doing the same thing over and over again. It's like chewing meat that has already been chewed and ground up. He calls it shameful for a wise man to repeat the same acts like a child conjugating verbs. I eat, you eat, he eats, day after day, forever.
That hits home. I mean, how many of us have had that feeling about our own routines? The get up, commute, work, watch TV, sleep cycle. Bali realizes that external objects can never provide permanent satisfaction because they are finite and they are repetitive.
It's the hedonic treadmill. On a cosmic scale, you get the thing, you get used to the thing, you get bored of the thing, you conquer the world, and you realize the world has become small and predictable. So Bali has a flashback. He remembers asking his father, Virachana, about a place where there is no more wandering, a place where this restlessness finally stops.
And his father gives him this riddle. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole text. He describes a great country.
Yes. Virachana says to him, "There is a country with no earth, no sky, no oceans, no mountains. It's pure space. But there is a great sovereign ruling it. And this sovereign has a minister who does all the work."
And the minister is the problem child here.
The minister is the active agent. The sovereign just is. He's silent still. Virachana explains that the sovereign is the soul, or silence itself, and the minister is the mind.
This is the core political thriller of the soul. The father tells Bali, if you conquer the minister, you conquer the world. If you don't, the minister rules you. And here's the kicker. The minister is invincible to all weapons. You can't shoot your mind. You can't nuke your anxiety.
Correct. And any force you use just creates more resistance. If you try to force your mind to stop thinking, what happens?
It thinks 10 times louder. The classic, don't think of a pink elephant, and suddenly that's all you can see.
Exactly. So Virachana explains the strategy. You defeat the minister not by force, but by a lack of reliance on him. You stop trusting him. You stop desiring what he offers. You effectively ignore him into submission.
It's a divestment strategy. You're just withdrawing your capital, your belief, your attention from the mind's crazy projects.
Bali meditates on this teaching from his father. He realizes, I am consciousness. He stops desiring the next conquest, the next pleasure, and the transformation is instant. He enters samadhi, a deep, blissful trance. And the text says he stays there for 1,000 years.
Just totally checked out in catatonic bliss. The demons are probably freaking out. Where's the boss? We have a quarterly review meeting. But he eventually wakes up. And this is the crucial part for our listeners. He doesn't stay in the cave or on the mountain peak forever.
No. He considers it for a moment. He thinks, why bother ruling? This is all just chewing ground meat. But then he has a deeper, more subtle realization. He realizes that refusing to act is just another form of desire. It's the desire for inaction. It's still an egoic preference.
Oh, that's a subtle trap, the spiritual ego that says, I'm too holy to file my taxes or do my job.
Exactly. So he decides to go back and rule the demons, but with perfect equanimity. He views prosperity and adversity as the same. He becomes a living, liberated king, just like Janaka. He realized that the problem wasn't running the empire, it was his hunger for the empire. Once that hunger was gone, he could run the empire perfectly without stress.
It just feels like the recurring theme here is that true freedom isn't changing your location or your job, it's changing your attitude. You can run a demon empire from a place of total peace.
If you are detached, if you know that it's all a game, a performance.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most psychedelic case study, Prahlada. Now, if Bali was the board boss, Prahlada is the desperate devotee.
The stakes are very high in this story. Prahlada is the son of Hiranyakashipu, a demon king who was notoriously killed by Vishnu's avatar, Narasimha, the man-lion.
Just to give people the visual on that, Narasimha is a terrifying form. Half man, half lion, who appears at twilight and rips the demon king apart on his lap. It's a very traumatic family history for Prahlada.
Indeed. And the context is grim. The demon capital is in ruins after the war with the gods. The text says the demons are disfigured like lotuses beaten by frost. They're depressed, defeated, demoralized. Prahlada is looking at the total destruction of his race, and he realizes a hard truth. Vishnu is invincible. You cannot fight this power.
So he pulls a classic, if you can't beat him, join him. But he takes it to an extreme, profound level. He decides to worship Vishnu. But not just, saying a few prayers. He realizes, and this is the key insight, that to worship Vishnu effectively, he must become Vishnu.
Yes. The text says, he who is not full with Vishnu does not benefit by his adoration. It's a radical psychological shift from dualism, I am here, God is over there, please help me, to absolute monism, I am that which I adore.
So he begins this intense visualization, and the text describes it so vividly. He visualizes Vishnu, the blue skin, the four arms, holding the conch, the discus, the club, the lotus. He visualizes the great Garuda bird that Vishnu rides, and he visualizes himself as that very figure. He mentally puts on the Vishnu costume.
And it works. He enters a state of non-dual bliss. He achieves union. But there's a hilarious plot twist. The other demons see their king doing this, and instead of executing him for treason for worshiping the enemy, they start converting. They all become Vaishnavas, devotees of Vishnu.
Which is just hilarious. The entire demon race starts worshiping the god who is famous for killing demons. It's total cultural assimilation. And the gods in heaven get suspicious. They say, a clown becoming learned is suspicious. They think it must be a trick.
But Vishnu knows it's sincere. So he appears to Prahlada and offers him a boon, a gift. And Prahlada doesn't ask for wealth or power, he asks for discrimination, the power of self-inquiry. And then we get a deep dive into the meditation process itself. Prahlada uses this new power of discrimination to completely dismantle his ego.
This is the neti-neti process, not this, not that. Let's walk through it because it's a technique listeners can actually try. He goes through all his senses, one by one.
He starts with sound. He asks, am I the sound I hear? And he reasons, no, sound is just empty air vibrating. Then he asks, am I the touch? No, that's just a sensation on the skin. Am I the taste? No, the tongue is just a restless muscle. Am I the smell? No, that's just particles in the air.
It's a process of elimination. The fundamental logic is, if I can observe it, I cannot be it. If I can observe my hand, I am not my hand. If I can observe my thoughts, I am not my thoughts. So if I'm not any of the data coming in through my senses, what am I?
He comes to the conclusion, I am the witness. I am the light of the lamp. He realizes he is the all-pervading spirit, the consciousness in which all these things appear and disappear. And he loses his ego so completely that he forgets he's a demon. He forgets he's a king. He forgets his own name. He enters a catatonic state of pure bliss for thousands of years.
Again with the thousands of years. These guys have no sense of linear time. But this, of course, creates a practical problem. The demon world falls into total anarchy. Without a king, the strong prey on the weak, it's chaos. So Vishnu, the very god he was worshipping, has to come back and intervene. He has to wake Prahlada up.
And Vishnu's argument for waking him up is fascinating. It's an argument for engaging with life. You would think God would say, great job, you've escaped the matrix, come on up to heaven. But Vishnu basically says, get up and go back to work.
Why? What's his reasoning?
He tells Prahlada, the world isn't at the end of its cycle yet. The rocks haven't melted. The suns aren't burning the earth to a crisp. Why waste this perfectly good body?
It's almost like Vishnu is saying, look, I created this whole playground. It's not time for recess to be over. Go play in it. Don't just sit in the corner facing the wall.
Exactly.
Right.
And then Vishnu says something crucial. He says that death, or this kind of catatonic withdrawal from the world, is for those who are weak or poor or ignorant, those who can't handle the world. They need an escape. But for the enlightened, life is a blessing because they are content. They can enjoy the show without being hurt by it.
That is such a powerful flip of the usual spiritual script. Usually we think spiritual people should want to leave the world. Vishnu says, no, if you're truly spiritual, you should stay and enjoy it because you're the only one who can really enjoy it properly.
Because you're enjoying it as the witness, not as the victim.
Yeah.
You're watching the movie knowing it's a movie. So Prahlada accepts this logic. He wakes up and he rules as a living, liberated king until the end of the age, the Kalpa.
So we have these four stories. Janaka, the cool intellectual, Punya, the ruthless logician of grief, Bali, the bored out of his mind achiever, and Prahlada, the devotee who merged with his god. They all end up in the exact same place.
They all arrive at the state of Jivan Mukta, living liberation.
So let's synthesize this for a minute. We've been throwing this term Jivan Mukta around. What does that actually look like in the wild? If I met one at a coffee shop, would I even know? Would they be floating an inch off the ground?
Probably not, and that's really the point. The definition given in the text is someone who acts, but knows they are not the actor. They are inwardly cool. The text uses the metaphor, inwardly cool like the moon, even when outwardly active. They might be running a multi-billion-dollar business, raising a family, or leading a demon army, but inside there is no fever.
The text mentions that word fever a lot, doesn't it? The fever of greed, the fever of worry.
Yes. Greed is described as a black adder, coiled in the heart. It either paralyzes us or makes us pathologically restless. It makes us sit still like stones, paralyzed by want, or whirl about in frantic, pointless activity. The cure is this internal coolness. And the tool to get there, in every single story, is vichara reasoning.
I noticed that this text is very, very big on reasoning. It keeps calling reasoning the philosopher's stone. It's not asking for blind faith at all. It's asking you to look logically and relentlessly at your own experience.
It asks you to deduct your way to freedom. If the world changes every single second, how can it be fundamentally real? If your body is different than it was 7 years ago, how can it truly be you? If you were a frog in a past life, why does your current job title matter so much? It's a logical dismantling of the ego's flimsy claims. It is, as the text says, the hatchet of perseverance and the shovel of penetration.
And there was that one point from the Bali section that I found really empowering. We skipped over it a bit, but I want to circle back. The idea that destiny is a fiction.
Oh, that is a crucial point and a very modern-sounding one. Virachana tells Bali that destiny is just a word we use for the accumulated results of our past actions. It's not some fixed script written by a god in the sky. He says the mind is the employer of destiny.
The mind is the employer of destiny. That's a bumper sticker right there.
It is, and it means that current, courageous, conscious effort can override fate. If you change your mind, you change the trajectory. You are not a victim of the stars, you are the author of the play. It's an incredibly empowering stance. It removes the excuse of, oh, it's just my lot in life.
So let's bring this all the way down to earth. We've talked about tortoise minds, painted moons, past life frogs, bored demons, and deity visualizations. What is the takeaway for the listener who, let's be honest, is probably just trying to get through their commute without screaming at the car in front of them?
The takeaway is that you have a shortcut to quietude. You don't have to change your job or your family or the world to find peace. You don't have to wait until you retire or until the weekend. You have to recognize that the minister, your mind, is running the show, and frankly, he's a bad boss.
He's a micromanager who thrives on drama and panic.
Exactly. And you need to fire him, or at least demote him to an advisory role. You need to stop trusting his panic attacks and his endless promises of future happiness.
So when the mind says, if this meeting goes badly, my entire life is over, you use that needle of reason. You just ask, really, is that logically true?
Correct. You use reasoning to realize that the things you're so stressed about are, like Punya said, just dust raised by the gusts of fancy. They're transient. They're temporary.
And you can start to cure boredom, like Bali, by realizing that the next iPhone or the next promotion or the next vacation won't fix it. Only the internal silence, the internal sovereign, can.
And ultimately, like Prahlada, you realize that you are the very thing you are seeking. You are the witness. You are the silent, peaceful space in which all the anxiety is happening. But you are not the anxiety itself.
It's a lot to process, but it's incredibly freeing. It means we can be in the world dealing with chaos, anarchy, war, or just a really bad meeting, and internally we can be as still as a rock in a painting.
That is the promise of the Upasama Khanda. It is the promise that peace is not a destination you have to travel to. It is your fundamental nature. You just have to uncover it from under all the noise.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked about Prahlada realizing he was Vishnu. The text says he forgot he was a demon. He forgot his name. He just was. What would happen, just for a moment, if you forgot your name? If you forgot your job title, if you forgot your personal history, your worries, your plans, what would be left? The deep dive suggests that what's left is everything.
It's the only thing that truly matters.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.